As Sierra was saying, I'm from Vancouver here, which is Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh unceded lands. So I'm very appreciative of our hosts with whom I'm able to live here. And I'd like to be able to kind of take us through how to draw orcas today. And so this is one of my, I'd say one of my favorite animals, but then again, being a biologist, part of the whole thing is that it's the diversity of life that really excites me. And so, yeah, orcas are awesome and wonderful, but I also love all sorts of wildlife. Right down to bacteria, which is what I was studying. So one of the things we're going to do is talk about the particular group of orcas that I'm going to focus on here, and it's the southern resident orcas specifically, because as you may know, animals exist in many different subpopulations, and so some of them interact with other ones, and then some of them are pretty much separate from each other. And the neat thing about whales and orcas in this case particularly is they have culture like we do. They don't have all of their knowledge from instinct. They learn a lot of what they know about how to hunt, their languages and so on, from their parents and their family groups. And so this develops into a long-standing culture that is many generations long. And so southern resident orcas have learned how to hunt Chinook salmon mostly, and some other types of salmon, which is very different from some of the other, the big orcas, which are same species, but a different population that also lives on our west coast that hunt marine mammals. And so you have these vast differences in the culture of these species that makes them unique, just like human cultures are different from each other. So with that, I'd like to have a shout out here also, and a thank you to Ron Watkins for joining us. As Sierra was mentioning, he's one of the ambassadors for Sharks for Kids, which is another organization for which I do some of these drawing seminars. We did a fun Halloween one on sharks. And he was gracious enough to share with me some of the photos that he's taken of orcas on some of his trips, actually. And so I'm going to just bring up a couple of photos of these, share the screen here, and just show you some of the kind of, here we go. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, so this is the kind of organism that we're dealing with. And Ron is a wonderful photographer of marine life. And he does a lot of beautiful photos of sharks, but not just sharks, orcas as well in this case. These were transient orcas in the Galapagos. So they're not the same ones that we're going to be looking at today, but they're very similar in appearance. There are slight differences, but they give you an idea very much of what these animals look like in the wild, in their natural habitat. It's from somebody who has had the rare opportunity, I feel so lucky to be able to have spent a wee bit of time near enough orcas in the wild where they've approached me. It's magical to be able to see them in their habitat and behaving naturally, seeing them where, oops, looks like I'm slide here. That's okay. There we go. Seeing them naturally in the wild. And then the last thing here I'm going to have is one of my paintings, just to kind of give you a quick view of something that I kind of drew. So thank you very much, Ron, for the photos that you shared. That was really beautiful stuff. And this here is sort of an interpretation. I did a painting of an orca doing something that we see around here on the West Coast, which is really fun. Orcas here have been known to give themselves belly rubs on some of the stones near shores and on some of our lower mainland area here. They'll go into shallow water and basically rub their bellies on the stones. And it must feel good and might get some of the parasites off, or some of the growths of sometimes orcas have algae and so on growing on their bodies, and so. But it's really, really cute when this kind of thing happens. So this is something that I painted just to kind of show it. Okay, there we go. So let's draw orcas then, and I'm going to be I'm going to switch over to my drawing program for this. And here we go. I'll give us first a preview of what this will look like. So as Sierra was saying, what you'll need is a pencil and paper and an eraser. And you know, whatever size of paper is fine. Just keep in mind where, this is why we show this sort of preview. It gives you an idea of how big, you know, where you want to organize the drawing to be. So you don't run out of space on the paper. We're going to be drawing a mother and calf orca of the southern resident group. This is kind of to commemorate the fact that the very happy event that this September we had 2 new calves show up in the J pod, which is a large sort of family group of orcas that are members of the southern resident population. The southern resident population only has 72 members right now, so they are very much endangered, that population. And as we were saying, that since they have their own culture, this whole group here, if they were to go extinct, we would lose a lot of orca culture. So we want to prevent that. This is why it's important for us to do what we can to help protect them. And so we had 2 new babies, which is really nice. One of them was to the mother that actually had the baby in 2018, who unfortunately lost the baby. And we saw a very moving bit of orca mourning where she carried the calf for like 18 days. It was extraordinarily sad. But what's really nice to see is she's had a new one this year, and that one is surviving. So let's keep our fingers crossed. So that's our intro image, and I'm going to go and just move this over a little here, and I'm going to take our preview down. I'm going to start showing us how to do this. So what's going to happen is that we'll use our pencil to draw it, but sometimes I'll ask you to draw a light line, so don't do too heavily then. And other times I'll say, you know, you can make a heavier, thicker line. Sometimes with the light lines, you want to make sure that you make them light enough so that we can erase out some of the stuff and kind of fix up some of the lines to make it easier to see what's happening. Because some of the shapes we're going to draw here first are just kind of to help us orient things. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. And bring this down in size, and here we go. Now, I'll warn you, there are times when the program sometimes makes my voice kind of get all kind of choppy, but that won't last for long. So if it happens, hold tight. I'll hope it doesn't happen too much. If you folks hear that happening in the group, just let me know. If you want me to repeat anything, I'll be happy to do that. So sure. Here we're going to take down the preview. Thank you, Sarah. I think that was great.
And just to kind of reinforce what Julius is saying about drawing lightly, from experience of having done these, like some of the lines you just want to have barely show up on a page. They're just a really, really light outline. And I think for this one, you might do some sort of like cross section, something where there's some lines going across. And that's just preliminary lines to help sort of measure out the drawing later on. So definitely go with a super light stroke of your pencil. And if you're using a normal HB pencil, which a lot of you probably are, and I am as well, just super, super faint, and that way you can easily erase those lines that help us just set up the right shape later on.
Excellent. Yeah, that's very good advice, Sierra. Thank you very much, because this is true. That's the reasoning for why we want to have some lines heavier and some lines lighter. That's a very good point. And so in this case, I've set up my drawing program to be sort of the same size or dimensions as an 8.5 by 11 inch letter sized page. So that's the most common one that a lot of people have, and I figured that works out well for us. But it doesn't matter what size or shape you want. If you want something the size of like your room, hey, right on. You can do that. In the meantime, so here's what we're going to do. The first shape that we're going to draw here is going to sort of outline the shape overall, most of the size of the mother. So you want to keep in mind that there's going to be a little bit of space on each side of this shape, but it's going to be, it'll show up most of the size we want. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to do it in black here. And so we're going to take, it's kind of, I don't know what kind of a shape you want to call this. Whoops, sorry. Sometimes my computer does little funny lines that I don't want, but that's okay. It's kind of like, whoops, hang on, sorry. I think it's shifted to a different, there we go. There we go, okay. It's kind of almost like a banana shape or like a short fat sword shape or a leaf shape. Actually, let's call it a leaf shape. Kind of a leaf shape. But one end of it on the left side is blunt. The other end on the right side is sharp pointed. Okay? So that's kind of, it's kind of like, yeah, you don't do this, but if I were to do this, you know, you could do like the midrib of the leaf and the vein. So that kind of gives you an idea of how it might be leaf shaped, okay? So, but don't draw that part of it. That's just to kind of give you an idea of the reason why I'd call it a leaf shape. I think it's kind of obvious. But, so that's the shape we want as our first shape here. This is going to be most of the shape of the body of the mom orca. And these orcas are amazing. They live in groups. Orcas are dolphins, by the way. So we'll kind of talk about their biology and their conservation as I draw them here. And it's kind of a fun part of it. They're dolphins. They're the biggest dolphins, living dolphins in the family of dolphins. You can sort of see that when you look at them. They have a little bit of a bottle-like snout, kind of like a lot of dolphins have this long snout or rostrum. Orcas don't have so much of one, but there's a little bit of a bulge, and we'll see that in a second as we draw that. But right now, the head is going to be on the left side, and the tail is going to be on the right side. Now, for the tail, we're going to be drawing this orca not exactly from the side, but a little bit more interestingly. She's kind of swimming, passing by us underwater, if we're imagining ourselves underwater, and some of her body is right in front of us, and some of it is still further away, and we're seeing her at an angle because she's huge. Orcas grow up to be like 10 meters long. They're beautifully huge dolphins. So for the tail, which are called flukes, these are that flat paddle-shaped tail of whales. They're called flukes. Just go to the end of the body that you drew where that sharp point was and continue from that sharp point and just come down into sort of a hook-like shape like this. And this goes out mostly to the end of the page, almost to the end. And the reason why it's like that is that we're seeing the flukes, or the tail, slightly from below. She's paddling and she's pushing down with her tail, and so we're seeing the bottom of the tail, kind of, partly. Now we're going to add, there's kind of a tail stalk, a part of the body that comes just before these flukes. It's called the tail stalk, or the peduncle. Kind of fun to say that, peduncle. And you'll go at near the end of this large first shape you drew, and you just kind of go up like a ski hill a little bit, and then curve back down toward this hook-like shape of the tail, and then join it like that. What's happening there is that whales and dolphins, they undulate their body up and down, right, as they paddle with their tail. And this makes their body kind of curve up and down. And that's what we're seeing here. That sort of tail stalk is kind of curving upward as she's about to push her tail downward for a downward stroke. Now, I'm going to zoom in a little bit here just to show what's happening next. Here at these flukes we drew, we want to add a little bit of a notch in the middle, because the flukes of whales, they're in many different shapes, but I don't do this part, but I'll just draw what's happening. If you were to look at these flukes from above or below, they look like this. You've probably all seen the tail of a whale, or the flukes of a whale looks like this, right? This notch over here, that's what we're going to draw here. And so we're going to just make a little notch where it's going to represent the middle of the flukes of this whale. And remember how Sierra was saying that you want to be able to draw some things light? Well, this part we didn't draw light because we kind of want the whole flukes to show. But even if you didn't and you have a pencil, you can still sort of erase out a little bit. And you see this part here where we drew the notch, that line that we drew initially on the sort of the big hook, we can just kind of erase out a wee bit of it to make that notch the actual part of the fluke that shows, like that. Okay. And then actually you can also draw a little tiny line from the body here to connect it to the flukes, because whales have this thickened part of the body that kind of tapers out, narrows out into the flukes, and then that's where they connect with the big paddle that they use for propulsion to push them along, okay? Like that. Okay, so now I'm going to zoom back out. So now we need a dorsal fin. So this is something really cool. When whales, they evolved actually from land-based animals over 50 million years ago. So they are actually a very, very old group of animals. And they're mammals, but their ancestors were on land. And so there are some things that they evolved in water that are only useful in water and not really on land. A dorsal fin is one of them. Dorsal means on the back, or like on the back of an animal, the top. And this is a fin that helps them to stabilize while they're swimming, right? To help them to swim, and they don't like rotate around in the water, but it keeps them stable. And so this fin comes on top of the orca, just a wee bit further back than the middle, and it's going to be kind of curved back like this and a little bit hook-shaped. This shape is referred to in biology as falcate. Falcate basically means hooked. And so this is something that you'll see in a lot of dolphins. And it's a little different from most of what we see in sharks. This is part of how you can tell dolphins from sharks when you see their dorsal fins in the water. Sharks more often than not have a more sort of triangular fin that doesn't have as much of a hook. That varies a bit. But dolphins typically have more of a hooked fin like this. Porpoises have more of a triangular fin, so I guess you can confuse porpoises with sharks a little bit as well. But orcas have a relatively hooked dorsal fin. Okay? And the other thing is that you don't see something that you see in some other animals down at the base of the back of the dorsal fin. You don't have a part that kind of hangs off. Sharks have that, but dolphins don't. It connects all the way along the bottom. Okay, so that's the dorsal fin. One thing to note about this too is that the females, you can tell usually the females and the younger males from the really older males in orcas, because the older males will have a more tall dorsal fin, tall and narrow, and the females will have a more hooked dorsal fin. So you can usually tell this apart when you see them raising above the water. So now we need flippers. This animal also needs these paired fins in the front that are the equivalent of our arms and that actually evolved from a land animal's front legs. And so we're going to draw two flippers, one on the left side and one on the right side of the animal. And I just saw our little hummingbird at our feeder, which is really wonderful to be able to see. I like to see wildlife showing up nearby. We have a little Anna's hummingbird here. She's adorable. And so here we go. We have a flipper, the front paired fins of the orca coming down from near the front end of the animal, like this. It's got a blunt tip, not sharp. And it comes back like this and then stops like this. So, excuse me. Sorry. Orcas have this wonderful sort of rounded flippers. And the neat thing about them too, is like with the dorsal fin I was saying, these flippers you can kind of use to help to identify whether it's a female orca or a male orca, especially the older males. They get these gigantically large blunt flippers, the males. And so the females also have large flippers, but they're not quite as outsized as the males ones. And so you can usually tell, again, them apart this way. But the neat thing about orcas too, you see these big fins, the big dorsal fin and the big pectoral fins, or the flippers. And it's been hypothesized by scientists that one of the reasons for these large fins is that they use them similar to how you'd use radiators in a car, for example, to shed excess heat. And so because they're warm-blooded, in tropical areas, because these whales go all the way from the tropics to near the poles, they need to be able to exchange heat efficiently with their environment so they can maintain a comfortable body temperature. And their fins, these big fins, have a high surface area, and they can use them really well to exchange heat, either gain it or lose it. So kind of a fun fact about them. That's the left flipper that we drew. Now there's also right flipper. As we mentioned, there's a second one, there's a paired one. Now this one you only see kind of, because it's behind the animal, on the other side of the animal. So we're only gonna see some of it that hangs out from behind the body, and it looks like this. Kind of an arc shape, and it just goes in. The front flipper overlaps it, so we're not actually seeing all of the back one as well. And the other thing here is that we can then also erase out a part of a line that we drew, or partially erase it out, however much as you can. That line that's here that we drew of the body initially, that went through the left flipper, you can actually kind of erase that out if you have an eraser there. If not, that's okay. It'll still be obvious, but this will make it look a little bit better. So this back end of the flipper over here, you can see kind of goes a little bit further back than the front part. And so that's how they have it. They've got their flippers that have this sort of more longer trailing edge than the front end. This is something that you see in a lot of dolphins as well. Actually, one other part that we can sort of erase out here a little bit, since we have our eraser in hand, is at the very back end of the animal. Remember, we're talking about the tail stalk. See that line that we drew of the original large shape there? Well, we can erase out the portion here that goes right under that curved tail stalk line. Because this is actually going to be the curved body of the animal. And the last bit here also, this little vertical bit, this up and down bit, there, like that. So now what you see, as I was explaining, the bodies of the animal is this sort of undulating, curving shape as she's paddling with her tail. And that's why we're seeing this curved shape. And that's why we erased out these parts, so it looks like a single form instead of, broken into parts. Okay, so there we go. Now she needs a mouth. Orcas need to be able to eat. So you go to the front end, this blunt end of the animal, and you're going to draw this mostly straight but slightly curved line, just a little bit below the tip of that blunt end. And it comes back like this. And there's a wee bit of a built-in smile like that. Some dolphins have these wonderful sort of built-in smiles in the curvature of their mouths, and orcas have it a little bit, not quite as much, but I'm smiling because our doggy just came in from a walk and he's being silly. He's very cute and fluffy. And so there's the mouth of the orca. And now we also need an eye. Now, dolphins and whales have interesting skulls. They have their eyes very much close to almost in line with their mouth. And so it's just above the mouth. And it's very much at the end of where the mouth was. So you just draw this little lemon-shaped eye like this. I always love whales' eyes. They always look so serene. Their eyes are kind of like half closed looking, like they're sleepy. And they're looking at you and they just look so peaceful. And they really are, actually, come to think of it. Orcas are amazing. They are top predators. They're the largest one of the largest marine mammal predators in the ocean, next to like sperm whales, for example, that hunt actively. They are like the bears or the wolves of the sea, and yet they are incredibly gentle with humans in the water. Now, this is not to say we should never approach them in the wild. It's as much, to give them respect because we don't want to harass them, but also because they're large animals, and even if they don't mean to, they could accidentally hit you with a fin. You don't want to get injured on that, so we don't approach them. But when they do approach you in the water, they're beautifully gentle. For a predator, this is spectacular. There has been, if you look at the records, exactly one incident, well supported, of an orca biting a human in the wild. And even that was a case where it was a surfer in very bubbly water with not good visibility, and it was a young orca. So it was probably mistaken identity. The surfer looked like a seal and accidentally bit. Didn't kill the person or anything, just an accidental bite. Orcas avoid attacking humans. It's amazing. How much they do that is spectacular to me. Anyway, so they are gentle giants. They're beautiful animals. Anyway, that was just a fun thing about orcas that just amazes me. Now, for the snout of this orca, we want to refine the shape a little bit of that big shape we drew. I'm going to zoom a little bit here. So we're going to go to the front end, and you see where we drew that blunt nose of the orca? We're going to refine that a little bit, and we're going to draw this line that goes and dents in a little bit like this, in from that line and then back out. And now we can kind of erase out that bit that hangs out beyond it like this. That's because, as I mentioned, orcas are dolphins. And now not all dolphins have what's called a rostrum, or that beak, but a lot of them do. And orcas have a little bit of one, and that's what we drew here. This little bottle-like bulge at the front here, that's kind of like the equivalent of how bottlenose dolphins have that beak. You can even draw a little tiny bit of a dotted line here to help show this, delineate kind of this bit of a dent there. Separates out that beak a little bit. Okay? So now it's starting to look more like the shape of an actual orca. Just one thing to add here while we're talking about the head of the orca. One neat thing about them is their skull, as I mentioned. This is a drawing I prepared ahead of time just to kind of show you. You don't have to draw this, but just wanted to show you how interesting they are shaped. That's the skull of an orca, just the bones. Mouth open there, and when the mouth closes, these teeth, you can't see the teeth on the drawing we're doing because his mouth is closed, and the lips are overlapping the teeth. The teeth overlap when the mouth is closed. They interlock, so they're really great at grabbing fish. In this case, southern resident orcas eat fish, Chinook salmon. They're really great at grabbing fish that way. And the neat thing about these guys is that if we were to add the skin on top of that, that's kind of how it looks. You can see, and actually, if I'm going to remove the skull and the upper and lower jaws, you can see that the eye here is very much in line with the mouth, and there's a lot of soft tissues that you wouldn't be able to imagine are there without if you knew. Oh, there goes our doggy. If you just saw the skull. Dolphins and whales are really neat that way in terms of their the shape of their bones and the shape of their soft tissue. So kind of neat stuff about them. Okay, so that's a little bit of interesting information about their anatomy there. I'm going to go back to finish up this mom orca. So she needs a way to breathe, right? Now, this is how dolphins and whales differ from land animals as well. They don't have nostrils. They have what are called blowholes. The blowhole functions just like a nostril. They don't breathe through their mouth like we can, right? I can inhale through my mouth. These guys don't. They inhale through this specialized hole on the top of the head. And we only see a little bit of it in this drawing because it's on the top of the head, just in front of the eyes. So you can just draw this tiny bit of a line here. Because it's kind of, if you looked at it from above, it would be kind of a little bit shaped like a crescent. And then it can open up and inhale. And this is also how they spout, how they blow that mist above them. And you can recognize whales from the shape of the spout or the mist that they blow out often. So that's the blowhole. That's how they breathe. That's what connects to their lungs, because unlike a fish, they don't have gills, they have lungs like we do. So now we're going to draw in the color patterns because these guys are like, they have tuxedos all the time. They have these wonderful suits of black and white, beautifully colored, right? If you've ever seen an orca, or like the photos we showed earlier from Ron Watkins' beautiful photos, you can see how wonderful colored they are. And they have this interesting color pattern where their underside is white. This is called counter shading. It's where the underside of an animal is lighter in color, and that functions to help them to blend in with the background water because their shadows, which are normally darker, are partly canceled out by the lighter color of the underside. So it helps them to hide from the animals they're hunting. Neat that way. I'm going to draw this line from the back of the mouth, and it's a curved line. It goes downward toward the flippers, and then it kind of hooks back forward and tucks in under the flipper. The underside of this is going to be white. So if you're going to be using colored pencils afterwards, you can draw this bottom part here. Don't put the X there, but that part is white, and then the rest of it will be black. There's more white too. Second bit of white is a characteristic eye patch, and this is one of the things that makes orcas adorably cute, I think. they have this wonderful little eye, big eye patch. And it happens just above and behind the eye. It's sort of oval shaped, but it's not quite. You pay attention to it. If you start just above and in front of the eye, you go up in an arc, back, smooth, curved arc toward the back, and then about the same place as that lower white curved back toward the flipper, you turn directions and you curve back forward. At this point, it's starting to look a little bit like a lemon, but then you curve back upward as you near the eye, and then the part here joins up as a more sharp point at the front. Now, this eye patch is important because it helps you to recognize what population of orcas you're looking at. There are quite a few different, not just populations of orcas, but entire what are called morphotypes. These are different shapes and colors of orcas that have been separate from each other, have been reproducing separately from each other for so long that they now have genetic differences. They look different from each other at this point. And the eye patch shape and size is one of those things that helps us to identify different ones. So what we're looking at here, the southern resident orcas have this shape. There are other ones that live in the Antarctic, for example. The type A, or sorry, the type B, no, the type A have a different shape. So if I were to draw a quick little cross section of the face, some of these have these enormously long eye patch. Okay, this is a little bit of an exaggeration, but it's close to that. The subantarctic orcas or some of the Antarctic ones have these very large eye patch. Okay? And then there's a type C, which is the Ross Sea orca, and it has kind of a more, looks like this kind of an eye patch, almost like a teardrop shape. Okay? So that's the type C. And then there's a type D, which is really cool because this was recently found to possibly represent a second species of orca. It has a more box-shaped head, so not as long, and the eye patch is really tiny. And so if you were to see photos of these, they're very, very distinctive. Anyway, that's a type D. We're dealing with the southern resident orcas along the North American west coast, and they have this shaped eye patch as we have here. So that's something that's important to keep in mind. The other thing is that they have more white underneath the body. From behind the flippers, those front two paddle-shaped fins, you're going to draw this line that goes just above the body edge and goes back. And then they have this really, really neat little saddle shape almost. Well, not saddle, kind of like a projection that comes up and back down toward the bottom of the body and then joins like this. This is a very characteristic shape. Anybody who's seen an orca knows it's an orca when you see this. Keep in mind, however, there are also some small dolphins, like Haviside's dolphin, that have a similar kind of an underside white. This is something, but they're tiny little things. But they also overlap in their range at one point in the southern hemisphere, so you could actually see both of these together. It's the neatest thing. And the other thing that they have is there's this bit of white underneath the tail. So if you wanted to draw, basically take the fluke at the very back and draw a line on the inside edge all the way around it. Like this. And the inside of that will be white. And then there's this little bit of white that comes up to the back of, or the front, the end of the tail stalk. There's one more thing that happens on these orcas for color patterns, and this is not quite white, but a sort of a grayish colored saddle shape that happens behind the dorsal fin, that tall fin on the back. Comes down like this, and then has this bit of a hook in the end, and then comes back up toward it like that. And so that's not quite white, it's more grayish in color, and it changes in shape and darkness with different groups of orcas. There's the mom orca's shape, all right? Now we're gonna do a quick little drawing of a baby orca above it because we're celebrating the arrival of those two, J57 and J58 are the two babies that happened this year that were born to J-pod, which is the one of the three family groups of the southern resident orcas. And so we're going to draw the baby's body, and it's gonna be kind of, oh, what kind of a shape is this? Here, I'll draw it. It looks like this. It's kind of a hooked, whoops, kind of like a hooked leaf shape, hooked lemon. Oh, I don't even know what you would call it. Kind of like if you were to take an oval and you stretch one end of it out and give it a point. I don't even know what you would call this shape. Kind of like a claw. No, like a cat's claw. Something like that. You could say it's sort of like a cat's claw. It's smaller, right? It's a little one. It's like a newborn infant size. Okay? This infant has flippers like the mom. Now, baby orcas look a lot like their parents in overall proportions or the size of the various parts of their body, but there are a few small differences. So the flipper here, which comes down like that, and back around, is a little bit smaller proportionally compared to the body than the mother and the father. And they grow larger proportionally with age. Also, the dorsal fin, that fin on the back, is also smaller and more hooked than the adults. And so you have, it's more like what we see in most dolphins. Most dolphins have a smaller dorsal fin than orcas do, especially than the bigger, older male orcas, which have a very tall, almost straight dorsal fin in some of these types. And the flukes, remember, are those the tail paddle, but now this one we're seeing in a different way. I wanted to show that you can see them from different angles, right? This one's flukes, we're seeing edge on, right? So when you were to look at it, not from above or below, but edge on, it looks like just a narrow little blade like this. See? If you were to look at your hand, not the palm forward, but right at the edge, that's what we're seeing. We're seeing it only on the side because of the way this little baby is paddling. We just happen to, at this point, catch it when it's edge on, just to show you that you can draw these flippers and fins from different angles, and they look very different. And this is one of the fun things of being an artist. You get to, represent wildlife from many different angles, not just from the side, not just from the top, but from in between different things. I find that very much fun. The mouth, like the mother, has got this wee bit of a built-in smile, kind of like that. And then again, the snout, and again, for this, I'm going to zoom in a little bit so that we see a little bit more clearly what's happening. But snout, here again, we're just going to go tiny bit in from that edge. This is a thick line here, so it's a little bit harder to make that obvious. I'm just going to erase it a wee bit of that outside. That might be even a little bit too far in, so you can always add a little bit to it. So like that. And don't worry if you don't get it right away. As an artist, I do a lot of erasing. Even if I'm doing it digitally like this, I'm working on a computer with a stylus and drawing tablet. I have a built-in sort of eraser mode, and I do a lot of erasing and such. So that's what happens. You do it with practice. The eye, again, is right behind and above the mouth, the back edge of the mouth. And then again, like with and we're going to erase out that bit of the body that goes through the flipper there, just so that you can see the flippers in front. Now we're not seeing the other flipper in this case. The reason for that is because this baby is rotated a little bit toward us, so we're seeing a little bit more of the top than the mom. And because of that, you can see a little bit more of the blowhole. The blowhole is right here on top, just in front of the eye. It's where it would be spouting if it were, and there's like a spout of mist if it were on top of the water. This is underwater, so we're not actually, you can draw it on at the surface of the water if you want. Surfacing, that could work too, and you can draw a bit of mist spouting out. But we're going to draw the white patches. And again, for the white patch under the body, you start at the back of the mouth and draw this curved line toward the flippers. And then remember at the eye, there's that sort of flattish oval shape with that sharp front point. That's the eye patch. And then remember there's this under the body, there's this funny little projection, hook-shaped bit that goes on the bottom side. And then the last thing, remember, was that saddle shape on the top, just behind the dorsal fin, which is sort of hooked forward like this. And that's not quite right. So if you have your colored pencils, well, colored pencils is kind of a misnomer in this case, because really they're just black and white, right? But if you wanted to fill these in with white and black, you can. Just remember that kind of like we did with the preview, some parts are black and some parts are white, and this is the guide that we're using for this, right? So that's interesting. The line there. That is how they look. And one last thing I'm going to add here, actually, is to kind of show you the really neat thing about these. If you wanted to make this the dad and not the mom orca, and here's what you would do differently on the adult. Remember we were talking about the fins, the dorsal fin and the flippers being a different size relatively to the body in the males, in the adult males? Well, here's what happens. In the adult males, that dorsal fin, instead of being curved like that and shorter, it's really tall, pointed at the top, and then pretty straight. This is on the older ones. So I was fortunate enough to see on one of our boat tours an adult male with a beautifully tall dorsal fin, and they are just really striking looking. And so that's how you would draw the dorsal fin if it was going to be an adult male. The flippers are also proportionally bigger, and it goes like this. So you just draw outside of the females, and you don't have to do this on your drawing, but if you wanted to make it a daddy orca, a really older daddy orca, this is what it would look more like. That's one of the flippers. And on the other side, the flipper is also bigger, and you can see some of that one there. So that's kind of what it would be like if we were to draw the fins of the male. That gives you the distinction between the two forms that you commonly see. Well, there we go. And that's our orcas. And now if you wanted to, yes, you can also color it in. And once again, I'm going to just put up the preview that we had so that you can see the finished piece. And that takes us to the end of our drawing session with our orcas.
Thank you so much, Julius.
My pleasure.
This is an absolutely beautiful being, and you've captured it so well.
Thank you.
It's really neat to see now that the colors popped in there. Yeah, and it makes me so happy to think of these babies that have been born recently.
Yeah, it's so wonderful.
It gives hope for the local orcas. As some people were saying, orcas are in many different places, and they hunt different things depending on where they live. But here in BC, the salmon are very important for the health of orcas. So with decreasing salmon populations, it raises a lot of questions about what orcas, if orcas have enough food. They don't only eat salmon, but it's one of the things they eat. And so there are a lot of threats to salmon, partially caused by humans, partially caused by human-caused climate change. We're going to be sending an educational package for anyone to use with learners, whether they're at home or in schools. And so that will be coming out tomorrow in the follow-up email. And that email will also include a recording of this webinar. So if you had connectivity issues, or if you'd like to redo the webinar or do it at a different pace, you can do that starting tomorrow. And there really is so much to learn about this being. It's a fascinating being and very intelligent. And it was so tragic last year when we had the mom who was carrying around her baby, but that's a sign of the intelligence that these beings have, and you know that they feel things and they have emotions too. Even if they can't speak in the same way that humans speak, they have a very very amazing community and all sorts of habits and things that they do, just like humans. So I just want to give a moment to Asher. So Asher is our newest facilitator of learning and only started last week on Thursday, so it's still week 1. And Asher, I'll just hand it over to you to introduce yourself.
Perfect, thanks, Sierra. Hi, yeah, my name is Asher, and I am not even done with my first week with the Sierra Club, but I'm super happy to be here. I'm going to be a facilitator of learning, working mostly with the Climate in Place program, so the program for the grades 6 through 8. I'm really looking forward to it. I love working with that age group and getting to talk about all sorts of exciting things like orcas and the climate and the natural world we live in. Thank you, everyone. I am calling from the land of the Squamish, the Tsleil-Waututh, and the Musqueam nations. I'm a settler and an uninvited guest on this land, so I give thanks to be able to be here. And I am so thankful to Julius for this Orca presentation. So far, this is my drawing. And
wow, right on.
Thank you. I really am looking forward to doing everything with the Sierra Club, doing more educational programs like this, and hopefully getting to know all of you.
Thanks, Asher. So if possible, and if you enjoyed this webinar as much as we did, those of us drawing along here, we would encourage you or your class or your school to make whatever donation you can to help continue supporting the work of Sierra Club BC and of our education programs in particular. So these online webinars are something relatively new that we've been doing. We had a first one back in May where we did the Northern Spotted Owl. And then we had, as part of our fall series, one about the Vancouver Island Marmot. And most recently, one about the Boccaccio rockfish. And then today, the orca. And we've chosen these species because they all have either critically endangered or somewhat endangered status. And that the dwindling populations really come down to human interference with the natural world. So there's so much to learn about why humans are impacting these species and what we can all do to help prevent the loss of species, the loss of their habitat, where they traditionally live and thrive. And so we encourage you to continue learning using, in part, the educational package that we have for each of the webinars, but also just to keep learning on your own time about these amazing beings that we share the world with. And so if you're able to make a donation, that would be fantastic. And those help support as well our in-school programs. So Asher is one of the people who will be in schools very soon. And we have Kirsten, who many of you know, Telia, who was on the call earlier, or is back now, I think. Telia and Kirsten also offer school programs. And a lot of what we do involves face-to-face interaction, and we're just maintaining safety protocol following everything that's going on with COVID. So if you're interested in a school program, you can make a request on our website, and we'll do our best to go in person if you live in an area where we have staff located. And if not, then it's going to be an online experience with live video calls and follow-up and activities to do in between. So we have a lot that we're trying to do, but we are a small team and we're trying to reach as many of you as we can. So thank you for your patience in waiting for a workshop offer date. And I know some of the classes on this call have already had visits from our staff this year, and we thank you so much for your active participation and all of your wonderful hands-on energy that you had during those sessions. I'm enjoying watching the screen here as Julius adds in kelp, which is a very iconic species for the West Coast and many other areas of the world.
Giant kelp and bull kelp.
Yeah.
And of course, you mentioned the Chinook salmon, which are almost the exclusive diet of the southern resident population of Orca. So if we lose enough salmon, then the entire population of Orca, of this population, is in threat.
Mm-hmm. And all of the species are interconnected. So when one species suffers in some way, it affects many, many other species. And then each of those species affected then affects many other species as well. So the health of orcas is very much connected to the health of ecosystems and all the species around it. And us humans are having a bigger impact than we might think on these magnificent beings and all others. So we encourage you to think about that. And in the package, there are some ideas and some strategies that you and your family and your class can look at in terms of reducing your impact, reducing a negative impact on the orca and having a more positive one. So the first thing that we encourage you to do is to finish all of the coloring of your orca and to please take a photo of it and email it into social@sierraclub.bc.ca. and Maya has just put that in the chat box there. So we'll be adding that to the page online, our online webpage featuring this webinar. So you'll see the recording of it, and then below that you'll see a gallery featuring all of the images that are emailed in. So the first thing is to finish that drawing, take a photo, and then we encourage you to display your drawing somewhere where lots of people will see it. So maybe that's in your classroom, maybe that's putting it, I don't know, sticking it to the fridge, maybe that's putting it up on a wall in your house. And when people look at the drawing, you can let them know about this webinar that you did and what you learned about the orca. And hopefully you can share some of the cool facts that you learned today and how cool orcas are and why we need to work to protect them.
And if I may add, there's another fun thing that I found that that has been really useful as well, is that one way, in addition, that we can help orcas and marine life and wildlife in general is to be involved. If you can write letters to your government representatives, your MPs and your MLAs, to tell them why, you know, how much it means to you to have this amazing wildlife. They like to hear from you. This is how they help to represent us. They need to be able to hear us, what's important to us. So if you can write letters to them, and one of the really fun things is if you can include a picture that you drew with it, that actually goes a long way. Pictures, especially from kids and from everybody, people love to see this. Government workers work, you know, on mostly documents and so on, but when they see pictures, I think that, like with a lot of people, people love to see pictures, and it means a lot more. And I think they'll remember the letter a lot more and maybe act on it more. So if you can do that, that's another really fun way to help advocate for the welfare of wildlife.
For sure. And I know that some people who are on this call actually did write to Premier Horgan with their northern spotted owl drawings, which was fantastic.
Wonderful.
And
influence the policy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it does make a difference. And the more people that write, including kids, even if you're young, you actually do have a really big impact.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Yeah.
And I mean, at the end of the day, we all share this planet, and the borders that humans have drawn on maps really don't apply to any of the beings, right? Orcas are crossing borders all the time. And so the policies that we may have in BC or in Canada versus the policies in other places like Washington or Oregon or California, we need to work together across all of those boundaries that we've imposed, and remember that these beings, they live everywhere and they're affected by the good and the bad that's done everywhere. So thank you so much to everyone for participating. And I see all sorts of different comments here in the chat box. I really hope that you've enjoyed this webinar, and it was a pleasure to have all of you join us today. And we really look forward to seeing your drawings. So please do email those in. Finish them up, sign them. It's great to see a signature or a name on there because it's your artistic work. And email those in, and they'll soon be up on the website for the whole world to see. And then if you like, you can actually share the link of the webpage with whoever you know, and they can go and see your drawing. So thanks again, Julius, for this fantastic workshop and for making drawing so easy and so doable for everybody. And
my pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for having me on these. I always look forward to them, and really, I just love to see so many people involved. I love it that there are a bunch of kids involved, because I always, you kids are the future of the planet, and so if you can be concerned about its, you know, how healthy it is, you're literally going to save the world, and that's wonderful. That makes me so happy. So, thank you.